What gives you the right? What's the difference between you and me?
I'm not wearing hockey pads.
The Long Halloween is one of my favorite comic books ever made. It's basically a crime thriller that just so happens to have Batman in it. And when I heard that Jensen Ackles was voicing Bats, I was fully on board. This is the Rosario Dawson of casting choices. Fans everywhere have been begging for years to let this guy suit up as Bats. He already did an outstanding job as the Red Hood, and I was excited to see what he would do here. Now, if only we could get Willem Dafoe as the Joker, then
I finally rest and watch the sunrise on a grateful universe.
They also decided to split this comic book up into two parts. The last time they did that was with The Dark Knight Returns, which is my favorite of all of their adaptations, and this excited me to the possibilities of what they would do with this movie. The Long Halloween is a pretty big comic book, and it can translate well by splitting it up into two movies. But whenever DC announces a new animation, it's always a coin flip whether or not it's going to be good. They've had successes such as The Dark Knight Returns and Under the Red Hood, but they've also had The Killing Joke. And while this movie certainly isn't The Killing Joke, it's definitely a slower movie than you'd expect for a Batman animation. So if you've never heard of The Long Halloween, insane, but it's basically a series of murders committed on holidays. Batman, Jim Gordon, and Harvey Dent all have to team up to take this dude down, whoever he may be. And this story really tests the characters and has them asking how far they are willing to go to see this through.
I can't really be a lawyer and a criminal, can I? I want to win. But do I want to win like this?
And I love seeing that in this movie. First up, I love Batman's arc in this movie. It is reminiscent of Batman Year One, where he's constantly getting his ass handed to him. The difference being that in this, it's his detective skills. He's fairly new to being a detective and doesn't quite have the handle on it. One of my favorite lines in this movie, Bruce says to Alfred,
I thought this would be about sweeping criminals off the street, maybe scaring them straight. I never thought the Batman was going to have to be a detective. A good one.
And I love that this is in the movie, because it shows the boneheaded mentality that Bruce had when it came to being Batman. When Bruce donned the cowl for the first time, he thought all he'd have to do was scare the shit out of the criminals, and that would be that. And this shows him that it sometimes may require more skill than just brute force. The beginnings of him becoming the world's greatest detective. Jim Gordon and Harvey Dent have similar arcs, but on the opposite ends of the spectrum. While Jim is happily married with kids, Harvey is just happily married. As the story goes on, you see how much Harvey's wife means to him and how much it kills him that he can't spend as much time with her.
Watch an old black and white movie.
Baby, I'm so sorry.
You even get the sense that his wife Gilda only has his marriage to Harvey. Her wife seems to be in the dirt, and it may have been caused by her marriage to Harvey. Jim, on the other hand, his wife seems to understand his absence, though she doesn't like it. His kids, on the other hand, get the short end of the stick, and you see how much it crushes him that he can't spend a simple night with them like Halloween. The mystery of the holiday killer is extremely well handled, and even if you have read the comic book like I have, you might still find yourself asking, who is the killer? Even in this movie, we get a glimpse of the killer's eyes in this movie, but they don't match the actual killer. They might be doing that to throw people like me off, only to have the killer be the same. And that may well be true, however, for the time being, I remain curious as to who the killer is. I won't tell you who the actual killer is in case you haven't read the comic, but all the same, I'd still recommend reading The Long Halloween. It is such an engaging read. It took me 2 hours to get through. And this movie, being a crime thriller, it thrives on its slower pace. The comic itself wasn't exactly an action-packed comic book, which means the movie had one of two options. It could have added more action scenes at the expense of the story, or it could have gone with the slower pace, allowing more time to develop the characters. And I'm glad they went with the slower pace because it gives so much time to their characters, especially when some of it wasn't in the comic book. Take Batman's arc, for example. Batman in the comic book, he was already the world's greatest detective. He was just there for the ride. He was just helping out. But in this, it actually shows him developing more into the world's greatest detective and not already being the world's greatest detective. And the animation for this movie. When I first watched the trailer, I didn't like it because it looked incomplete. It looked very off. But in the final product, it looks amazing. Everything from the characters right down to the city all look extremely well detailed and beautiful looking. The only time I ever thought that it looked horrible was when Batman, or rather Bruce, put his finger up to his ear, and it looked like his hand was moving animatronically. But that is the only negative that I can really say about this movie. Overall, it's a damn decent adaptation of half of one of my favorite comic books. It's not as amazing as The Dark Knight Returns, but it's definitely not as garbage as The Killing Joke. If you're looking for a fun time with a decent mystery, this is definitely the movie for you. But that's all I've got for you this time. If you like what you see here and you want to see more, click that subscribe button, hit the like button, and if you want some more fun, I've started up a Twitch account. I've got the link in the description below. Hope to see you guys there.